You know what's going great right now, Ian? Google Stadia is going fantastically.
Yeah. Google Stadia is going great.
Swimmingly well.
Jason Schreier put out an article documenting basically the failure of Google Stadia, and makes some, even in the tweet leading into the article, makes some good points. And these are the big takeaways from Google Stadia's failure. It's still up there, but with first-party support gone, this thing is going to look like the PlayStation Vita. And the PlayStation Vita died it hung on, but for all intents and purposes, the PlayStation Vita was dead after Sony dropped its support of it. And I imagine that the same thing will happen here. They have missed their initial sales targets by hundreds of thousands.
Of people.
Yes.
Of subscribers.
Of subscribers.
Not dollars.
They tried to take on consoles rather than starting small, and they felt like they needed to bring in games like Red Dead, which they spent just insane sums of money on. Tens of millions each is what they paid to port these games to Stadia.
Well, let's back that up again. To port the game to Stadia.
Yes.
So Stadia is a streaming service where somewhere the game is running somewhere, and then it gets streamed to you. You think that it's running
off a computer
somewhere to get that to you. So what are you actually porting over at that point? I think it's a fancy way of saying we want to have this. Here's a ton of money to make sure that it comes here with no issues.
Let us do this, because obviously with they can't just go buy a copy off the shelf and do it.
It has to be licensed, basically.
It has to be licensed. So
it's a license.
I think the port is not so much the word as the red tape and paperwork to get the licensing over to us so that we can stream it on the computer.
We can put on our service.
And I'm sure that there were probably some things that they may have done to the versions running on the Stadia computers to
optimize it, maybe a little bit.
Optimize it is the word I'm looking for. But I'm not saying I'm not a programmer. Maybe this was just blood, sweat, and tears.
But
toiling work.
20 million,
not $20 million worth of work. This was an example of Google throwing money at a company to basically try to buy their way into the market by saying, "Look, we've got the big games."
Yeah.
And didn't really work. I think so. And then they started going out and they started finding indie devs and offering money to indie devs to bring their games to Stadia as timed exclusives. I say it every time, but my buddy Brandon's game Gunsport is on there as a timed exclusive, and I can't wait to play it. But I also haven't gone and gotten a Stadia to do so because it's a timed exclusive. So it was great for him. For the people who I don't have a lot of insider info here, but my assumption is the people who got money for Stadia to do something for them probably had a pretty sweet deal. They got the money. Their game doesn't need to be exclusive. They got the funding.
They get a direct return without risk on their game. And they might not have made that money on Steam or somewhere else. Yeah, no, they won.
So they
take Alphabet's money.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, we just mentioned them, but Q Games, the people who we talked about earlier, who did Frogger, they just put out a game called Raiders or Q Raiders or something, and it actually looks pretty interesting. And I think that one is also hopefully a timed exclusive. I think honestly, at least for me, seeing two games like that on there at least make me interested. At least make me go, maybe, and as of now exclusive, maybe there is a reason to check it out. Instead of spending tens of millions of dollars to port over games that are years old and that people have already played, why not take half that money and get something good and exclusive going for you?
Smaller indie games.
Yeah, fund, and that's exactly where my problem is. Fund smaller indie games. And
make them exclusive then. Then you'll have a reason for people to get on it.
Yeah, exactly. Create this online, and I'm not saying you can't have some of the bigger name games too, but
don't make that their focus.
Have a Red Dead and like something else big on Stadia when it comes out, but then fill out the lower ranks with all of these cool indie games that you can't play elsewhere.
That 20 million, or 10 to 20, there's other ones, whatever. They probably spent $100 million getting or more getting like Ubisoft games. You know how many indie games I could have funded from scratch?
Yeah.
hundreds potentially. If one's like maybe everyone's like $500,000 or less, like depending on how ambitious it is.
Go and look out there. Look at the cream of the crop indie developers we've got. Look at Tribute. Look at Yacht Club. Look at Necrosoft. Look at all of these companies that do these great indie games, and throw them the money and let them make something cool for your streaming service. I
don't know how well it's doing, but Apple Arcade I think has been an unheralded success because they get these games that are exclusive, they curate them, it's $5 a month, and they're quality games. And they're smaller games.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I subscribe to it. I haven't played some of these games in months. When I was first playing them, I'm like, this is a good game. This is a value here. So Google, this is what we talk about marketing. When you try to do everything, you do nothing. They try to do, we're going to be the competitor to the big consoles like the new Xbox, the PlayStation. We're going to compete with them and be like the alternative to having a console, but also do the indie game stuff, which is not like, so pick a freaking lane. And so crawl before you walk, basically, but Google's such a huge company. They're probably, well, we have all this money, just throw this money at this. I hate that approach to anything. I hate it with anything. It doesn't matter what it is. Or just start with something, a small success, and you build from this. And they could have started with the small success while they were basically beta testing this with the smaller games, which would not have required probably as much of a heavy infrastructure, and you could get around potential latency issues with some of these smaller indie games anyway.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Versus going for it, let's make sure you can play a first-person shooter that'll be as good as the Xbox, which will never happen.
I wanted to say that as well. Hire these smart indie devs with a track record to make games that are going to play that are going to play to the strengths of what you're trying to do. And I do think, going back to the talk of taking on the big boys, taking on Sony and Microsoft, I think there's a lot to be said about the goodwill people give a company or a company's likelihood to succeed if they are reasonable, if they are more reasonable in their descriptions of what they're trying to do. The reason why I think there's goodwill towards something like the Playdate, which, look, I'm into it, but I mean, just being completely honest, it is a system that they created the market for it. It's not like anyone needs a Playdate. There are plenty of handhelds, but why is it interesting to people? It does something kind of unique, and they don't think it's going to take over the world. They think, hey, this might be interesting. This is for people. This is specifically for people who like indie games, who like the kind of artistic indie games that these developers, boom, 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 that we have are doing the games. It's going to be about $150.
And you like handhelds.
And you like handhelds.
Yeah.
So
it's a specific niche.
They're happy to exist within that niche. They're not stepping outside of what they have. They're not building it up bigger than what it is. Stadia could have been a really interesting way to gather and curate very interesting indie games that you didn't need to play on a system.
It could have been the Apple Arcade, but for your TV.
Right.
They could have done something like that. $20 a month, $15 a month, get access to whatever 100 indie games, and like they're good indie games, and they're exclusive. You have something different that doesn't exist elsewhere.
Not to necessarily bring it up or spend too much time on it, but my personal opinion of something like the Intellivision Amico, and maybe a lot of people's could have been changed earlier on if they were aware of what they were doing and tried to market specifically to what it is. Hey, these are instead of trying to be like, we're going to be in GameStop and we're going to be the fourth big player in the console wars. Sure. You have to know what you have,
or pick just retro games, the
right
educational stuff. Not we're going to do everything.
Instead of saying it's going to do everything, because that's essentially where we're at that point with the Amico. No. It's going to do whatever you want it to do. That's what it's going to do. Give us the money.
Yeah.
No, you have to have an idea, and Stadia had an idea, and they decided to do the hardest possible thing with it, and it's not.
Threw all this money at it. Marketing was terrible. It sounds like their biggest peak was when people were actually playing. Well, it sounds like they were playing the PC version of Cyberpunk on it, and that was better than playing on a console because they're playing the PC version.
Yeah, that was
the
height of it.
It took the biggest failure, arguably, in video game history. It could be one of the big. It's in the top 5 probably. Cyberpunk top 5 biggest failures, at least of an individual game ever, in order to show that, oh, there's something to the Stadia. But by then it's too late because no one was into it, and no one bought into no, I want a console. Plus, I want to actually own, I don't want something locked in the cloud. I want it at least locked to my unit, or have the physical media. So there was no advantage of playing those games besides, a non-functioning game that should have been delayed another year, but still probably would have the issues later. But that's more cyberpunk issues than anything else. That's not the console itself issues there. So, we'll see how long this lasts. I mean, they got rid of, was it a month ago? It seems like longer. They got rid of their in-house studios. It's not long for this world. Remember, there's that website here, which is linked in the article, killedbygoogle.com. Without looking, Ian, how many Google products or platforms has Google killed off in their history? Price is Right rules, without going over.
777.
Oh, not that many. I was going to say, it's still shocking out. 226. 777?
I don't know.
226 products have been killed off. And Google has not been around as a giant company that long. Little over, what was it, like 22 years, something like that?
Yeah, I mean,
23 years.
I think of them as having always been there, but I remember the day someone was like, have you tried Google? And I was like,
yeah,
no.
like 95, 96.
I was like, oh, this is better. I don't need to use web crawler or Lycos or Hotbot anymore.
And most of these, they've killed off 36 apps, 171 services, and 19 pieces of hardware. And most of these are within the past, I would say, 10 years. When you look back, like, it looks like the majority is like the past 10 years. So you're talking about killing, on average, your Pat math, like 6 to 7 a year over like 20 years or more than that, 8 a year, 9 a year. It's ridiculous. Google Chrome apps is done after a year. That's this year. Android things is gone this year. Angular JS, JavaScript is gone in December. Google Hangouts has been officially gone.
Angular JS is gone after this year?
Angular JavaScript, gone after this year.
That's crazy, just because I was talking to a friend I haven't seen in a while, and he works in programming, and he's like, yeah, I'm using Angular JS. I was like, I've never used it before. And it's like, well, I guess he won't be using it much longer.
11 years old. Hey, that's a good run for a Google product. 11 years. 11 years. I'm trying to look at other ones I've thought of. A lot of this is just shit they threw against the wall, I guess. Something called Loon was killed a month ago. Service to providing internet access via an array of high-altitude balloons hovering in the Earth's stratosphere. It was 6 years old. Okay. That was the thing they tried to do. I guess they couldn't monetize that. That's insane. Okay. How about satellite instead of that? I guess it'd be better than satellite. Google Home Max, So, yeah. They're trying to do too much. They make money off of like, the web advertisements, and obviously they got the YouTubes, so they got this stuff going on, but they have too much money to throw around. I guess, and try this stuff. Give me some of that money. I'll do something with it. I'll start up some business venture. Virtual dry cleaning. That'll be my business. We'll dry clean your clothes virtually through the app somehow. Drone dry cleaner. There you go. It'll come down to your house. There he is. Put me on Shark Tank. Cuban, you out there, Mark Cuban? The drone will come and dry clean your stuff. I know. I'm insane. Is that it on this?
That's it.
So this will be gone. I'm going to give it, wiped off the earth, another year. The servers will be shut down. I think they'll leave them lingering for a bit. Right? Another year, I think.
Yeah.
Another year.
Yeah, I think this is going to absolutely expedite the process.
Yeah. Well, it'll be like 2 years total from like beta launch to like it's just done.